And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I'm your host, Demo, and another sort of one-of video that I'm doing sort of off the cuff. I was just thinking, are there commanders that are casual and that are competitive, right? So we know there is cEDH and casual. I think they should be different formats. That way we won't have any confusion or overlap, but I'm not going to get into that today. Basically, what I was thinking about is, are there commanders that you just can't show up to a casual game with? I've talked about this a few times on my channel, and I made my 10 commanders that you don't see anymore video, and a lot of people commented on that video, and I even mentioned in that video about commanders like Shroom and Breya that basically they became combo commanders, right? That's sort of why I think they've disappeared, is because with Breya or Shroom, every time you would show up at a table with them, people would go, oh, he's going to combo. He's got that combo, whatever the combo is, or a combo. I think Breya, there was a few. And so you immediately became the arch enemy. And so that way, maybe you didn't want to play the deck anymore for obvious reasons. And so maybe that's why those commanders have disappeared a little bit. Alicia and Animar were two more that I mentioned in that video, where, Alicia became the combo with Karmic Guide, or the combo of I'm going to get my Master of Cruelties into play and just one-shot somebody. And Animar was the, I'm going to cast Shrieking Drake a whole bunch of times and make my Animar huge and one-shot my opponent who's playing black and white and can't do anything about it. Or some other combo, cast my Eldrazi for free because my commander's got a bunch of counters on it. A lot of those commanders don't get played as much, and people probably still have those decks, as a lot of people mentioned in the comments of that video, that yeah, they have those decks, they don't really play them anymore. A lot of those commanders on that list don't get played as much because they got known as a combo commander. Gave Guru of Spores is another one that just became a combo commander. There was lots of different combos you could do with it, and man, I haven't seen that commander in a game in a long time, and that's probably why I think it sucks, because there's a lot of neat things you can do with a Gave deck, but because it got known as a combo commander, it sort of disappeared, right? And it's, I don't think, good enough to play in a cEDH game, and you can't really play it in a casual game, so where do you play it? So, basically what I'm talking about here is commanders that, do they have a home? Are they competitive? Can you play them in a casual game? Do they have a home at all? Are there commanders that are disappearing from the format that maybe you just don't know where you're supposed to play them? Maybe you have that deck and you can't play it in a casual game, but not good enough to play in a competitive game either. So what do you do with it? Captain cedh is another one that I talked about recently in my most popular color combinations video, where it only has 460 decks on EDH Rex. That's shocking to me. It was number 12 when I made that video just a few weeks ago. Now it's already down to number 14 in those colors. Really powerful commander, and I just got to think, okay, that was a card that back in the day was feared, and you could be easily the arch enemy if you showed up at a table with it. So maybe that's why it's disappeared. And is it good enough to play in a competitive game? I don't think so. I mean, maybe it is, but I've never seen it in a cEDH game myself. Momor Vig is another one. That's another commander that for a long time, it became the hackball commander, right? It became, so for anyone who doesn't know, you basically change the text on the Momor Vig so that it reads green creature and green creature. So whenever you cast a green creature spell, you search your library for a creature card and put it on top of your library. And whenever you cast a green creature spell, right, you change the blue to green. And so now basically every time you cast a green creature spell, you're going and get a creature out of your deck, and then you cast it, and then you just keep going nuts with it. So then again, that became a commander that I think is a really fun, interesting commander, and has completely fallen off because it became known as a combo deck. 475 decks only on EDH Rec. That's shocking that it's that low, but I think that's the reason why. I mean, yeah, it is an older commander, but I think the main reason is it became known as a combo commander, and people didn't want to play it in casual games, and I don't think it's good enough to play in a cEDH game. So where do you play it, right? A lot of these commanders just don't have a home. And even the ones that used to be, like Derevi and Narset, for example, used to actually be cEDH commanders. Those were commanders that you played in cEDH all the time. Do people play Narset in cEDH games still? She seems kind of slow, I think, for a cEDH game now. Derevi, same thing. Used to be a really popular stacks commander, which I always hated because I thought he was such a fun, interesting commander. But you could never show up to a casual game with him because everyone assumed you were playing stacks. Prosh is another one. Where do people play Prosh now? Do people still play Prosh in cedh games? I mean, I'm not a cedh aficionado. I do watch some games. I do play some games. I haven't seen Prosh in a cedh game in a long time. So do people still play cedh Prosh with the food chain combo, right? That became the Prosh deck. The only deck you could play with Prosh became the food chain deck because that is what it became synonymous with. If you were playing Prosh, you were playing the food chain combo. And obviously, if you're playing a food chain combo, that's a cedh deck, isn't it? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. So do people still play Prosh in a casual game? Obviously, if you have your own play group, this is not a big issue. If you have some chill, kobold, tribal Prosh deck that you play in your play group, that's obviously not going to be an issue. All I know is I don't see Prosh hardly ever anymore. And I think the reason being it's not good enough to play in a cedh game anymore. And also you can't really show up to a casual game with it. You know, if we're talking about cedh commanders, the two commanders that to me, I think are absolutely just cedh and nothing else are Urza and Najeela. You can't play those commanders in a casual game. I mean, you really can't. Again, if you're in a play group where you have your, I don't know, construct tribal Urza deck that's really goofy, yeah, okay, but Urza is so powerful that how do you play that in a casual game without being super competitive? Najeela is absurd and busted. I played a guy just a couple of weeks ago, had a Najeela deck in a casual game, and I'm like, man, really, Najeela? He's like, oh, it's just Warrior Tribal. Just Warrior Tribal. No funny business. And I'm like, okay. But Najeela is so busted that, of course, he ran over all three of us in about 5 turns without even trying, just playing Warrior Tribal. So for me, Urza and Najeela, off the top of my head, are the two commanders that I would only want to see in a cedh game. What else? Like, are there other commanders that you can only play in cedh? Are there commanders that maybe a lot of these that I have named that you can't really play them in a casual game because they got ruined by the combo or that one deck that was out there that was sort of dominating? So they don't really fit in a casual game anymore, but maybe they're also not good enough to be in cedh anymore either. So they're sort of hanging out in limbo. And I think a lot of these decks, like Shroom, like cedh, maybe have lost popularity for that reason, because where do you play them? Can you play them in a casual game? Maybe, maybe not. Can you play them in a cedh game? Probably not. I think a lot of these commanders I named, if you're just doing what the commander's doing, like Gave, with all the combos Gave is capable of doing, is that deck good enough to play in a cedh game? Is it? I don't know. I've never seen it in a cedh game, so I don't know. Can you play it in a casual game? I don't know. All I know is it's another commander that I used to see all over the place in the format when I first started playing, and I don't see it much anymore. So that's what I'm basing sort of this opinion off of is a lot of these commanders. Are there commanders that are only for cedh? Are there some that maybe you can't play in casual, but also can't play in cedh, right? And I'll just end with talking about Zur the Enchanter. And I'm just asking, who plays Zur and where do you play them? Again, getting into the topic of cedh and casual, obviously you can make a cedh Zur deck, sure. Can you play Zur in casual commander? I mean, you can. For me though, if you're not in a play group, if you're just playing out in the wild with strangers, Zur is an untouchable commander, okay? You just can't play him. I had a Zur cedh deck, okay? A cedh competitive Zur deck. It was a stacks deck, and I was the arch enemy in every game. Okay, that's how ridiculous of a reputation that Zur has. Zur has such a ridiculous reputation in the format that even in a cedh game, I was the arch enemy with my Zur deck. So I don't know. Can you even play it in a cedh game without becoming the arch enemy? And basically, I think it's because of Necropotence. Just because of Necropotence, it makes Zur a huge target. And nobody wants you to attack with your Zur because they just assume you're going to go and get Necropotence out of your deck and put it into play, and then you can just draw a zillion cards. So I don't know. Where do you play a Zur deck? Obviously, you can play it in a casual game if you have a casual version and everyone in the group knows you have a casual version, and you can play it in a cedh game. But again, with my experience, even in a cedh game, I was a huge target and nobody would let me attack with my Zur. So I don't know. There it is. Just an interesting video for discussion purposes. I always like to make videos like this, especially for people. It's funny. I read the comments on these videos and people will say, in my play group this, my play group that. I just had a guy on one of my videos I just did recently that says nobody in their play group plays blue. The color blue is banned from their playgroup. It's kind of funny. So I like making these videos to sort of give people a perspective of things they haven't really thought about before because they play in their own playgroup or they play at their LGS where things are done a certain way and they're not really aware of the way things are done differently. Like maybe they have a very chill Prosh deck that they play Kobold Tribal or something, and maybe they never even heard of the food chain combo, right? So they don't know. So I always like to make videos like this to give people a different perspective on how things are in different places. Like I say, I play online a lot with a lot of people from all over the world, so I get a lot of these different perspectives and I sort of combine them all to make videos like this. And just, what do you guys think? Are there commanders that are only for competitive play? Are there commanders that you just can't play in a casual game anymore? And maybe that's why some of these commanders that were really popular in the format have fallen off, because you just can't play them in casual games anymore, and maybe they're not good enough to play in a competitive game either? Maybe? Comment below. Let me know what you think. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.